A very warm welcome to today's session hosted by Women in Nutraceuticals India Chapter, an organization dedicated to empowering women across the nutraceutical industry, fostering leadership, innovation, and equality. It is my great pleasure to introduce today's esteemed speaker, Dr. Vani Bhushanam, one of India's leading voices in sports nutrition. With over 25 years of experience, Dr. Vani has extensively worked with Olympians, Paralympians, and world-class athletes across multiple sports. She holds a doctorate in sports nutrition and an advanced postgraduate diploma in sports nutrition from the International Olympic Committee. She has been an integral part of India's official support teams at major international events such as the Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, Paralympics, and the Olympics. She currently serves as the scientific officer at the Sports Authority of India and leads sports efforts at Dr. Karni Singh Shooting Range. Dr. Vani has also contributed to national sports nutrition policies and serves as faculty at Netaji Subhash National Institute of Sports. She has contributed to FSSAI's guidelines on sports supplements and involved in science-driven initiatives of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Her impressive academic contributions include 25 peer-reviewed papers and over 50 plus educational resources. We are privileged to have you today with us to explore an exciting and timely topic: can India become a global leader in sports nutrition? On that note, let's begin this conversation. Dr. Vani, the screen is finally yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sneha. Thank you for the kind words. This is the first time that I would be interacting with such a platform of women nutraceuticals. Technically, this is not my domain area, if I have to say, because I am into sports. So you people have to, I will actually convey the sports perspective of what we look from India, particularly from the government sector and from the athletes' perspective primarily, because ultimately our consumers and the end goal is athletes, be it for industry or for the government, because it's our nation's pride, and it is in a way a soft power for us. So looking at that perspective, we are looking into nutraceuticals primarily, one with a general perspective, what the International Olympic Committee looks for, what is that we have as challenges in India to go ahead with this, and what could be the potential role of you women in nutraceutical industry to help us with to achieve the goals that we have. And India actually is looking forward to bid for the Olympic 2036, which is, if we get through it, it is going to be a huge success. And therefore, your contribution could mean a lot for us in encouraging sports and achieving medals and participation in sports, making India even more set up at a global stage. Now, with that, this is something you people would generally know because you are into the industry. Just to set up the stage for us for basic understanding, the nutraceutical market here, I'm not going to define the nutraceutical market as per what I would understand, but I will look from the market strategy. And this is from one of the publications that is a business model that is come up with one pictorial infographic, which says that there is a projected 10.818% CAGR increase across the years, right from 24, 25 and up to 32, which means another big increment beyond $1,000 billion US at stake in this industry. So majorly the Asia Pacific countries are one of the prime hits that any industry would be looking at, because the industry is not that very strong, probably because of the regulations or other aspects. If I could request people who are speaking, can put yourself on mute. I think else, or we could ask the host to do that for them. Okay. And now coming at the product line that we are looking for, basically the general understanding in the market is that any functional beverage, dietary supplement, functional foods, come into this picture, but regulatory purposes, nutraceutical comes into a different domain under FSSAI. The primary reason is to have a health benefit for nutraceuticals, but more than that, when we're looking at sports, we're looking at sports performance. So we would be rather more interested into sports performance rather than the basic concepts of health, because health anyways has to be achieved in addition to sports performance, because the prime goal is to achieve through performance. Now let's see what is the forecast that we have in terms of the source that we've received from the Euro Monitor 23 and the Kearney analysis, both in terms of the global market as well as the India market. The projection for 2027 is 670, and the previous slide we had seen that it could go up to more than 1,000 billion by 2036, which is going to be the target Olympic slot that India would likely potentially host, with the markets around Asia Pacific, North American, Europe, and other countries. We are far behind, definitely yes, but the trajectory and the forecast is very promising. Now at 7.28, between 8 and 8.9, it is at 11 that is projected for 2027, and a multiples of 3 by 2032 and another 6 by 16 by 2036. So when we look at these figures, it is really promising that these values, actually the market figures for the projections, show us that there is a larger scope in the market where it could be utilized, probed, and catered to. The general markets in which we as athletes look for are available in the form of tablets, capsules, soft gels, powders, gummies. All these are different forms. The first and primary requisite for any athlete is the macronutrients. So macronutrients in terms of carbohydrates, fibers, because fiber also caters into the carbohydrate broader classification, special carbohydrates in terms of capsules, gels, particularly and gummies used during marathon. Unfortunately, this is one news that I happened to read this morning. One athlete, marathon athlete in Maharashtra, who is 19 years old, died of a sudden cardiac arrest. The cardiac arrest is that, this is the primary investigation that has been known. Is the cardiac arrest due to earlier existing health concerns or due to the insufficient training knowledge to do with nutrition and nutraceuticals that could have helped the athlete survive? Is one thing that has to be taken with a word of caution. And proteins, as we all understand, is one of the recovery nutrients that go to that every athlete, including the recreation athletes and physically fit individuals look for. Omega-3, another recovery. So whether it be carbohydrate, fat, or protein in any of the forms, either as a single element or a combination of nutrients or basic elements, are primary requisite for any athlete. All put together would also have to adhere to the energy requirement, and it is required that the industry understands the athletes. Most often the research says that the athletes go through a case called low energy availability. Low energy availability is, very simply put, the amount of energy that is required for the body to function in its normal capacity after having consumed energy for exercise. The body generally prioritizes energy expenditure for exercise, followed by energy expenditure for maintenance of the body. If there is a continuity in low energy availability, the general physiological norm is that the body tends to slow down the organs, which means the organs will not function in its best of the capacity. And continuum of these conditions over a long period of time could set into a condition called RED-S, which is relative energy deficiency syndrome in sports, which has both health as well as performance implications at the adverse levels. Therefore, this is one aspect that at the nutraceutical industries you could look for of how you could handle LEA at a most convenience level, which is because when you're talking about nutraceutical industry at a larger market, the elite athletes probably composite about 1% of the entire sports population. The target rather should be for more coverage grassroots level athletes. One of the reasons why I have stated this example of the marathon, who was a grassroots level athlete. So the requirement stands from there, because better the foundation, better is going to be the athlete and as they progress in performance. In addition to this, vitamins and minerals, each of the vitamin and mineral have their own important role to play in sports. Particularly, if I can take one example like vitamin D, we all understand that vitamin D is integral to the bioenergetics, which is involved in the energy system and therefore the metabolism. The right fuel substrates that are required is propelled by vitamin B. Deficiencies of this B1, 2, 3, 5, all involved in the metabolic pathways, need to be targeted. Similarly, it goes with other multivitamins and new minerals. Another example that I can talk about in terms of vitamin is a classical case of vitamin D, where vitamin D is known to be one of the single most nutrient which is very, very important in an athlete's life, starting from their immunity to addressing their stress factors, and more so among para athletes. So if we go into each of the nutrients, the type of forms that is available already is in existence in the market. What we will have to also look at is the dosages and the bioavailability of these components enough for the athlete to have that sustained performance during training and competition. That is another area where we will have to look at. Definitely now the hype is around pre and probiotics. As on date, the current literature has mixed opinion and mixed results have available in the literature of having potential benefit in performance with the use of prebiotics and probiotics, though there are potential benefits established in literature for health. So basic health could be addressed, but the use of prebiotics and probiotics for performance enhancements needs to be probed more. Probably this could be one area where the nutraceutical industry could look for. And coming to botanicals, we as Indians have a rich traditional medicinal plants, medicinal herbs and botanicals. Ashwagandha, curcumin, gokra, all these, the researches available in these areas are so latent that we are not able to translate it to the use among athletes in a scientific manner. So probably the team can look at these aspects where we can capitalize these areas and contribute to performance in sports. Generally, if we look at it, the basic definition, what Stephen in his Foundation for Innovation in Medicine has stated, is that nutraceuticals are foods or products or foods that provide either medical or health benefits, which will include prevention and or treatment of any disease condition, which means either for prevention like a prophylaxis or for therapeutic effect. Whereas the FSSAI categorizes nutraceuticals as foods that consist of extracts, isolates, and purified chemical compounds, either of which will have a definite physiological benefit. Therefore, nutraceuticals, when having this as a definition, any athlete who is physically active will have a physiological changes and training adaptations that occurs in during training, and that is also what is required for the physiological benefit. In addition to maintaining health, nutraceuticals, according to this definition, could play a very pivotal role in athletes' performance. I will just share what the IOC would like to define the term dietary supplements. Dietary supplements nutraceuticals and dietary supplements in many places are used interchangeably, but the ultimate goal is to provide for health and performance. Therefore, it could be any food or a food component, a single nutrient, or a non-food component, which actually technically fits into the nutraceutical definition. And it could be in any form which helps with the functional benefit of the athlete in terms of physiological effects as well. So the forms could be any functional food, formulated foods, and there is a technical word called sports foods. Sports foods are those foods that are convenience foods that can be used by the athletes during training and competition, which majorly addresses the macro nutrients and as well as electrolyte requirements of an athlete. So it could be single nutrients and multi-nutrients. So if we could compare both the FSSAI nutraceutical definition and the dietary supplement definition of the International Olympic Committee consensus statement, it looks more or less the same. Therefore, nutraceuticals and dietary supplements would go hand in hand. Why are we speaking nutraceutical in sports? What we need to understand is that the reason why athletes consume dietary supplements, be it nutraceuticals, the primary focus is to achieve health. Not all athletes would be able to have a balanced diet, which would proportionately correlate with the macronutrient requirement. Not every athlete is able to achieve this. So nutraceuticals or dietary supplements would be required to manage these micronutrient deficiencies, which includes all the micronutrients irrespective. Athletes consume dietary supplements for provision of energy and macronutrients so that it is at convenience for them to consume. For example, an athlete is about training 10 kilometers away from his residence. Consuming the ideal consumption advice for a protein is immediately after training. That immediately could stretch for minutes to hours, but the basic underlying concept is to consume as soon as possible for muscle protein synthesis acceleration. If the athlete is 10 kilometers away, it would be very difficult for him to reach to his residence, consume a high protein food, therefore a convenience food such as this would. Similarly, as in the case of marathon runners, during competition, during actual event, mid-event consumption of carbohydrates has been found to have beneficial effect in addition to electrolytes. So these are all convenience ways that the energy and macronutrient needs must be met. In addition to this, each sport has a specific physique requirement. A sprinter, male sprinter, the body fat percentage requirement generally is advised at around 6% and less, whereas for a marathon runner is kept around 14% plus. So there is a big difference between the sport. Therefore, a physique correction is required for the athlete based on the sport that they are training. Therefore, for manipulation of these, nutraceuticals or dietary supplements are required. One of the common dietary supplement that is in vogue for consumption for manipulation of physique is one protein. The other one is L-carnitine. However, L-carnitine, there isn't enough studies to substantiate its effect in burning fat and therefore manipulating physique as the claim is. So there are more research or robust scientific evidence required in this area. Any athlete, irrespective of the sport, comes with a baggage called injury. There is an associated musculoskeletal pain because the athlete is not training physically to become fit, but he's pushing his barriers beyond physical fitness. Therefore, there is going to be stress physically and mentally. Pain is an integral part of their life, but however, elevation of the musculoskeletal pain is required, and dietary supplements or nutraceuticals could play a role. Rapid recovery from injury and rapid recovery between training sessions and competitions is another area where nutraceutical industry could play a role. In addition to this, the central fatigue, which is the cognitive function, which is cognitive function dependent, also would require implementation of certain foods or nutraceuticals such that the body is able to relax in addition to other psychological and other recovery modes. Ultimately, all this is done such that the performance is improved for the athlete and by supporting hard training during any training session. Better the training, better is going to be the performance at the time of competition. There's a direct correlation. In addition, being supported by mental strength and mental training. So having these as the areas in which athletes consume supplements, it is important that we probe into these areas where nutraceuticals could help in each of these areas. So when we see the relevance in Indian sports system, understood that it is a growing ecosystem. India, particularly the Ministry, Sports Authority of India, are investing in elite athletes in a PPP model. We have public partners also who are investing a lot in the elite sports, which includes infrastructure, developmental programs, grassroots level initiatives. The ultimate goal is to become a global sporting nation. Therefore, it is one of the reasons why nutraceutical becomes even more important. Despite there is a growing awareness, everybody knows that there is a requirement for a support system in terms of food and food related components in performance. There is very little access to scientific data which is proven enough to validate the inclusion of nutraceuticals in many disciplines. When we say sports, for example, if we take the sports such as shooting, the sport by itself is shooting, but it has multiple events. They are competed at different levels. So similarly, if we take athletics, there are about 11 plus categories in athletics, which are subdivided into multiple events. So with such a big range of athletes competing in different fields, even in India, and the number of the India's now capacity to have grown for able to achieve the benchmark for participation has increased. However, there is still a gap that needs scientific validation of the use of nutraceuticals to bridge this nutrition gap. And definitely, yes, whatever research mostly is available is from the Western world. There is hardly any data, there's paucity of data among the Indian athletes. So their distinct dietary patterns, their training environments, their physiological responses, all will require tailored requirements of each of the nutrient that will help in performance. It doesn't stop there. Definitely, yes, we have a traditional medicine, Ayush, now being promoted. There are a lot of projects that they are trying to take up to help with the performance part of the athletes, but still it is in its nascent stage. Therefore, use of botanicals, particularly from our traditional roots, would help us bring nutraceutical industry into the sports industry. This is one. And of course, there is definitely underutilization and validation of nutraceuticals available in the market, particularly for athletes. Whatever is the nutraceutical industry, the nutraceutical industry primarily caters to the healthy individuals or the addressing towards health, whereas performance is one opportunity or that could be considered for the nutraceutical industry. Now, what is a key gap that we have, as I already mentioned, is the lack of India-specific clinical research for different sports disciplines, age groups, and gender. In addition to this, there is a fragmented and overlapping regulations between the Food Safety Standards Authority of India, FSSAI, Ayush, the anti-doping regulations. All these, the regulations are more either watertight, where there is no coherence, or there is a lot of overlapping between the regulations that are there. In addition to this, there is a lot of poor awareness and unequal access to high quality nutraceuticals, particularly among grassroots level athletes. Maybe this is one area where grassroots level, actually the bigger margin of athletes are at the grassroots level. So this is one area which is a key gap in for nutraceutical industry. And in addition to this, yes, definitely there is insufficient trained professionals, particularly in sports nutrition and nutraceutical applications. Yes, there are sports nutritionists. This is a booming industry, including the education and academic sector. However, trained personnel specializing in nutraceutical applications into sports performance is still a gap that needs to be addressed. So what generally is required is prioritizing high quality scientific research, particularly driven by RCTs, which are sports specific. Probably we can look at examples of ashwagandha for endurance. We can look for curcumin for anti-inflammatory effect, but specific to athletes, or the use of quercetin for muscle recovery. Quercetin, yes, a lot of information is available and is used. However, validation is still a cause of concern. So what also is required for validation at the scientific level is the right dosage that will be useful for the athletes, such that it could benefit them in terms of performance, in addition to addressing to the bioavailability, because any plant product, for example, would have the risk for bioavailability. This Monday on 16th, I was with CSIR IHPT, that is the Institute of Himalayan Bioresource Technology, Institute of a part of the CSIR. We were discussing as part of one of our interactions, how we could handle bioavailability of the resources, Indian resources. It is really a cause of concern, because the dosage formulation, all these could be at one place, but bioavailability could be at another place. In addition to both these factors, what is also a cause of concern is the availability of safe products in the industry, in the market. In fact, there are a handful, probably one or two Indian manufacturers who look into providing safe supplements, but they are very restricted in number. The scale isn't much. It is not moved over larger area. Probably one or two supplements, say for example, protein or carbohydrate electrolyte drink is being tested for dope-free substances. Therefore, the safety is definitely at a question, because the career of an athlete is at stake. So scientific validation tools are required for all these aspects. One good positive aspect that we have for now is that Government of India has set up a laboratory which will test products for safety. We needn't go for third-party testing outside of India. So the potential regulatory challenges is that the current regulations that we have, particularly for from the FSSAI, is the lack of sports
in terms of increasing food safety regulation, whatever, I mean, like the stringency.
If I could have somebody put off, yes. The current regulations definitely are lacking sport-specific consideration, particularly in terms of the product claims and the doping risks that is involved. The guidelines actually of the FSSAI do not align completely with the WADA framework, which is the body that looks into the safety aspects and the anti-doping violation aspect of the athletes. There is an inadequate post-marketing surveillance of nutraceutical products, particularly. Therefore, there is an urgent need for transparent protocols both from the industry and also how we would look into this from the athlete's perspective. The primary concerns that I, as a professional sports nutritionist and athletes dealing with elite athletes, the first and foremost thing that comes to our mind is contamination and the misleading claims. There are n number of examples from across media and our own personal experiences where contamination is a big thing. The 2024 research report by one of the universities that was published has identified that the products that were available in the market had primarily trace elements at above TUL limits. Most of the protein products or protein powders that were available in the market were largely contaminated. Most of the labels that were available in the market, the product labels, that they did not conform to not only the FSSAI but were highly misleading. This is again and again reiterated, and also the sanctions that are imposed on athletes for dope reiterates again the fact that these still remain a cause of concern and challenges in the regulatory sector. And it is the industry that has to come up with some methods in which that you provide and bring out safe products into the market. There is definitely an absence of centralized database or registry that could have verified athlete safe nutraceuticals available for athletes to consume from. That registry is missing. Probably the nutraceutical industry can come up with some registry where you could have some websites put for verified products, particularly for dope-free substances. Definitely, there is a limited enforcement mechanism to check adulteration and counterfeit products that is available in the market, which again puts the nutraceutical market at a backhand. As discussed, there is a regulatory overlap between FSSAI, Ayush, drug and cosmetics have gone through these regulatory documents. There is a clear demarcation of how we could put nutraceutical into these is missing. In addition to this, nutraceutical contamination is an inadvertent doping issue, is bogging the athletes. The athletes definitely would look for certified batch tested products. Therefore, this could be done, put into a registry for verified website. The nutraceutical industry could come forward, particularly the women now. You would rather try to relate to this. So what could be the potential opportunity for the nutraceutical industry is that primarily what we lack is the clinical studies, robust clinical studies. Therefore, this is one area where you could capitalize. This is the biggest opportunity for providing with indigenous and underreached ingredients into the market through robust scientific methods, develop sport-specific evidence-based nutraceuticals which will align with the athlete's training cycle. Each athlete goes through different cycles, different periods of training, which is called training periodization, as preparatory phase and competitive phase and transition phase. Each of the phase has different aims. So the athletes, if they are aligned, the nutraceuticals are aligned with these cycles, it will be much beneficial to the athlete, in addition to being sport-specific, age and gender-specific. There is an opportunity to create certified anti-doping compliant product lines in the industry. There is a requirement for partnering with academic institutions and R&D collaborations to translate research pilot programs involving elite athletes and emerging athletes. Probably researching on elite athletes is practically not feasible. Definitely with emerging grassroots level athletes, the R&Ds could be taken up. From the nutraceutical industry perspective, there is a requirement for investing in more into innovative delivery formats. Currently, we have effervescent tablets, ready to shake drinks, transdermal pouches, All these are already available. Convenient forms could be innovated to cater to the athletes' requirement, particularly during competitions and compliance. Awareness campaigns on nutraceuticals is required. Still, not many, at least I can vouch for this, not many athletes understand the difference between a basic dietary supplement which will promote health, such as addressing a micronutrient deficiency, to a nutraceutical that will help with performance. That line of demarcation and awareness on these is lacking in the athletes. There is also KP studies done on athletes to see their awareness levels on products, the awareness levels, the implementation, there is a huge gap. So this gap could be bridged along with awareness campaigns. There is a requirement for establishing a India-based manufacturing units with global certifications, particularly looking at the indigenous and traditional products, which could be a bigger market. And definitely you would have, from the marketing side, me not saying, also you would look at exports for Asian, African, South American countries, because getting clean plant-based products in these areas is still a challenge. So this market could be explored in these countries for increasing and leveraging the market space. So what is required right now is to establish academic programs where the nutraceutical industry can, like, for example, I can tell you how Kellogg's, right from my college days, that's way back in late 90s and early 2000s. Industries like Kellogg's, products like Horlicks, Bonvita, they attached themselves, worked with the academic institutions to promote. Probably this is one way where you can work with the academic institutions to not only research high quality scientific models, scientific products that could be launched. That could be one avenue. Then probably using PG diploma programs, bachelor's program, master's program, particularly highlighting and integrating nutraceuticals into the course curriculum would be one way in which the nutraceutical industry could work in collision with integration with the academics. Probably the nutraceutical industry can come with validated certifications, particularly for safe, effective usages, dosages, and all these aspects, so that the awareness is increased and therefore the inclination for more demand for these products is on the high. In addition to the academic affiliations, research organizations, innovation labs, and internship programs in the nutraceutical industry could be encouraged, particularly from the nutrition academic sectors. When we look at the India as a exporter, there is a global search that could be tapped in. India definitely has a competitive edge. One, we are a huge population. If we could show good results with us, then definitely there is going to be a competitive edge when we work on with those countries such as the other Asian, African, and Latin American countries. This is one part that I am not a proficient, but these opportunities for export leadership could be looked into, and strategic actions where industry can work up with. This is not my domain area where business models are set up, but these are certain things that from the nutraceutical industries where you can case studies, take case studies of successful athletes, implementation, performance enhancement, then translate it to the market for escalation. So when it comes to the policy recommendations, where I, to a certain extent, contribute to, One is promotion of startup incubation and innovation hubs, which are athlete-centered nutraceuticals. There are a lot of startup incubations and innovation hubs that are in the market across all fields. Of recent days, I have been approached with a lot of companies or innovation hubs, or I should say startups, with new products which are specifically athlete-centric. There is a lot of probing that is required for moving from convenience food to performance food. So far what I have received or whatever is the interaction from the industry that I have is majorly the convenience foods addressing primarily macronutrients. Whereas the requirement is for those nutrients triggering athlete performance by and large. Probably the private industry can tie up with the government sectors as a public R&D funding. There are a lot of CSR promotions that go into sports. It requires that how you would tap the CSR public-private partnership to enter into sports organizations such as SAI to work with athletes, particularly for research and also for building up national data repositories, looking at the clinical evidence perspective. Partnerships, innovation labs, as already mentioned, are required. So from the sports ecosystem, what exactly that, if I have to wind off, that we are looking from the athlete perspective is that empowering athletes with scientifically validated, culturally relevant nutrition or nutraceuticals that can help them with performance. There is a requirement for increasing credibility in the international sports market. Currently, we are unfortunate to say that we are one among the nations which is in a negative light, has athletes who have been sanctioned for dope, and there are still some more cases pending, which needs to see the light of the jury. Unfortunately, it is. Therefore, it is one of the nutraceutical industry can help us with coming up with the product line, definitely, which can help athletes to alleviate this risk for doping and increase India's credibility in the sporting ecosystem. Because athletes' safety, scientific excellence, and India's current global sporting ambition to not only host the 2030 36 Olympics, but also to improve on the performance of medals is what the nutraceutical industry from the could contribute to the sports ecosystem, because the government is doing every best to align the athlete safety and put the Indian athletes into the global system. They are doing what best that can be done. Probably you can contribute to this. Definitely, if it is a market, then there's going to be an economic growth. Therefore, it will help indirectly the sports ecosystem by tapping onto the resources back into the sports ecosystem. So with that, I will end my session.
Thank you, Dr. Vani. That was a very insightful session. We are now open to questions. Megha, I suppose you have one.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Sneha, thank you so much, Dr. Vani. It was really a wonderful session and very, very insightful. You highlighted a lot of areas for the industry to work together with the government. But I was just wondering if you could also suggest a few pathways by which or through which the industry could liaise with the government in strengthening the regulatory framework in the field of sports nutrition.
There are three major gaps that, as I've already mentioned in the
Right.
talk. First thing is coming up with products, researched, scientifically robust products which can help performance. So the government will very much try to include those if they are scientifically tested and proven.
Mm-hmm.
This is one area because we are lacking that knowledge particularly there are very few that have been identified to have performance benefit with no inherent potential for doping violation. So what the government would look for are those product lines which are safe for athletes, but at the same time help them performance, because ultimately it is performance that matters,
Correct.
but not at the compromise of their career where they would be involved in. So this is one area. So the ways that could be tapped is coming up with these researches which are robust enough, coming up with any fundings that can help the government work in license. For example, we have few CSR funded organizations which
Right.
have supported us by providing sports science support to the athletes. So you can tap in those methods in which you can come up with any mechanism where you can provide sports science support, because now in the nutraceutical industry, all that we are looking for is injury management, elevation of injury, pain management, providing a performance. So these are three major areas. So in any ways which that if the nutraceutical industry could provide us with benefit, this is another area. Third, ways in which the industry can help us is the dosages. What is not known particularly to us is the dosage part.
Mhm.
So far, whatever is the literature that is available, that is for a minuscule number of nutrients or products, performance products. So if we could have larger combinations where we can explore alternatives. For example, let's say caffeine. Caffeine, there is a specific dose limit not exceeding 9 milligrams per kg body weight. That's the higher, that's not exceeding. So we have the TULs. The general recommendation is between 3 to 6 milligrams per kg body weight. So having known this, there are very few products in the market line that we say, yes, there is a performance benefit with a specific dose. The dose could vary. It could be, we could have a range. Like for example, now, as I said, for caffeine, we said 3 to 6 grams, not exceeding 9 grams. So probably we can come up with products which can give us those dose ranges. Probably it's which can have higher bioavailability. Now the shift is towards plant-based products among many athletes who are turning vegans and vegetarians, who have less tolerance to glutens and less tolerance to lactose. So that is one area where it could be looked into. Ultimately, when we look at sports, it is not one just nutrition that will provide performance benefit. There are multiple areas, right from their physique to their biochemistry levels of how the physical activity changes the biochemistry of an individual. Therefore, how nutrition can manipulate the biochemistry of the athlete for benefit. For example, the very most common example is the use of sodium bicarbonate, where you try, or the buffering agents such as beta-alanins. The buffering is increased. So we have only just one or two examples for that. Maybe we could have more alternatives for buffers, which can help athlete reduce the risk for injuries. So probably this could be one way in which the nutraceutical industry can work with, because one is definitely awareness aspect.
Sure.
Because whatever is the awareness aspect that is available, we are looking more from the health perspective.
Correct.
What is required is the awareness aspect from the athlete's perspective, the sporting perspective. They are two different domains. Because for a normal individual who is into fitness, the risk for dope doesn't arise.
Correct.
But for an athlete, it comes with the clause of safety against doping. So awareness around these areas also could be one way in which you can contribute and amalgamate with the government.
Sure.
don't know if I
Thank you
could
so
answer your question.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Vani. Absolutely. I think a lot of insights in there and a lot of areas that the industry can definitely tap in to support the government. And we strongly believe that as industry, we will also be able to, therefore, improve or strengthen the regulatory framework from that standpoint. So, of course, I mean, thank you so much on that.
And I would like to answer this question by Ms. Jayashree Ladda. Definitely, yes, there is a lot of movement currently for addressing female athlete specific research. Whatever research that is available, there are two lacunae in the research for athletes itself. The size of the population, because that's a limited population, and research available exclusively for female athletes, right from shift of the substrates during exercise, the metabolic shift of the utilization of carbohydrates, fats, from there to the effect of hormones, particularly around the menstrual cycle on performance, is lacking. So it is good there is a movement towards that direction, because the physiology of and the biochemical physiology, if I have to put it, changes with athlete between the genders. So it would be good that if you people can come up with more research into female athletes and benefit them. The only most studied is the anemia aspect. But fortunately or unfortunately, if I can put it this way, the general ways in which we handle athletes at Sports Authority of India is we do their biomarkers, both for fatigue injuries as well as for deficiencies. One of the key deficiencies that we look for is in the biomarkers is iron, folates, vitamin B12, all linked to iron and endurance. So we are not going beyond that. If we could go beyond anything with not just iron, but any other factor that can help with athletes. Because most of the studies that I see among Western population is the use of oral contraceptives, because they have athletes where they are culturally different from us. So the use of oral contraceptives or any other contraceptive methods and performance impact on performance is studied because of their cultural impact. That is not so the case with Indians, but still now we have slowly growing increase in the number of athletes who are married as well. So there are cultural shift happening in India. So there are a lot of things that can be looked into. So if
Do you
that
have any more questions? All right, then we close for today. Dr. Vani, on behalf of everyone present today, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to you for your insightful session. Your depth of knowledge, extensive experience, and passion for advancing the field truly resonated with all of us. We are deeply grateful for the time and effort you took to be with us and for contributing so meaningfully to today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sneha. I hope if we all could contribute to the sports ecosystem, I think we would have gone one step ahead.
Sure,
Thank you so much
sure.
for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.